No pictures.
Kal Kadosh. Boker Tov, right? We're going to continue with Daf Kav Zayin Amud Aleph, 27a1. However, we're going to just start from the Perek, the new Perek, which is on 26b. The last few lines on the page over there where it says, Bakol Me'arevin, you're allowed to do with any type of a food an Eruv. We're talking about Eruvet Chumin, okay, Umishtatfin, or Shitufeh Mevo'ot. Remember, the Eruvet Chumin was the Tchum of 2,000 amot. So outside of, right, once it finishes where my Tchum is, I have 2,000 amot until where I'm not allowed to travel anymore. So if I wanted to travel to the next city, I'm going to make an Eruv in the middle, and then I'm going to be able to travel to both cities on both sides, okay? Again, the Mishnah Kavav Bet on the bottom. Okay, Mishtatfin, we're also allowed to use any type of a food for Shitufeh Mevo'ot. Remember, Shitufeh Mevo'ot means that you have different chatzerot, different courtyards, and they all open up to a common mavui, to a thoroughfare. This is not a public Reshut Rabim, it's a mavui. It's like a side street. So therefore, all of those, you're allowed to do also Shitufeh Mevo'ot with any type of a food, except for Chutz Min HaMelech Min HaMayin, right? Except for the water and salt, right? Why? Because that's not considered mazon, it's not considered food. You're allowed to purchase any type of a food with the money of Maaser Sheni in Yerushalayim. Remember that years 1, 2, 4, 5, right? What you're going to do is you're going to take the second 10%. The first 10% goes to the Levi. It's called Maaser Rishon. And that's also already after you took Truma Gdolah, which already went to the Kohen. Truma Gdolah was the one, whatever, it's a little bit, or 124, 150, right? You come, you take it off, that's called Truma Gdolah. After Truma Gdolah, you take Maaser Rishon. Maaser Rishon is 10%, and you give that always to the Levi. The Levi is going to take off a 10% from that, which is called Trumat Maaser, and he gives that 10% to the Kohen. You're going to come and take the second 10%. That second 10% on years 1, 2, 4, 5 is considered Maaser Sheni, and on years 3 and 6 is considered Maaser Ani, which goes to the Aniim. Maaser Sheni, you eat it yourself in Yerushalayim within the walls. But what happens is that you have two choices. Either you take the fruits themselves, you take them to Jerusalem and you eat them inside the walls, or you redeem the fruits. When you redeem the fruits, you add an extra fifth onto the value, and then you take all that money up to Yerushalayim whenever you do Aliyah L'Regel, when you do the Shalosh Regalim, and then you buy food there and you're allowed to use it. So any type of a food, if you want ribs, you want good steaks, you want this, anything that you want, the good stuff, the meat. Yeah, Richard, the meat. So the good meat or whatever that you want, what you're going to do, you're allowed to come and you're allowed to buy with money of Maaser Sheni Yerushalayim. Chutz min hamayim melech, except for the salt and water. Hanoder min hamazon mutar b'mayim melech. If somebody's going to make a neder, a promise, a swear, an oath that they're not going to eat any type of a food, they're still allowed to drink water and to eat melach. Next, me'arevin le'nazir yain. You're allowed to do Eruvet Chumin for a nazir with wine, which means that even though the nazir is not allowed to drink the wine, you're still allowed to use the wine for Eruvet Chumin. Or for Yisrael, for Truma. Remember that for Yisrael, you're not allowed to eat Truma. Truma is only kosher for the Kohanim and not for a regular Jew. However, though, you are allowed to use it to make an Eruv. Sumchus says, no, it has to be chulin. In order for a Jew to use it, it has to be fitting for you to eat, for the owners to eat it. Ul Kohen, it is permitted to make an Eruv for a Kohen and Beta Pras. Remember, Beta Pras was you had a field that a person was buried there, and then it was plowed. So you don't know bichlal where exactly are the bones and where's the dead body. You're gone, right? So therefore, it's only assumed Rabbanan. So therefore, since the rabbis could permit it in a certain way, that's what we're going to see in the Gemara. That's why it's permitted to do it for a kohen in this field. Rabbi Yehuda says even in the Bet HaKvarot it's going to be permitted because basically you can make mechitzot in between and then you could walk straight through. Capish?
Can you tell me where we're holding exactly?
So right now, we are in Kav Zayin Amud Aleph on the top in the Gemara.
I can't.
27a1.
Can't read Hebrew, honey. I can't. What?
27a1.
After the Mishnah. When we just finished the Mishnah.
You're in 27a1?
Yes. Okay, we just did the Kavav Mubet 26b on the bottom. We just did the Mishnah, which was the new chapter, the chapter 3 of Masechet Eruvin. Okay, because we said that the reason why the Kohen, since he could actually come and put mechitzot going straight down the cemetery, so therefore he's allowed to actually come and actually do an Eruv there as well. For Moroccans, never. Okay, says the Gemara. Okay? Kav Zayin Amud Aleph, the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, En lemedin min haklalot, which means you cannot learn from a general rule. Okay? That means in our Mishnah, we learn certain things without any exceptions to the rule. Remember, Usually, when there's a rule, there's an exception to the rule. Just like when there's a will, there's relatives. Yeah? So the same thing, which means that the concept is that it says over here, we cannot learn from the general rules. Even in a place where they said, except for so-and-so, chutz mi so-and-so. Why? Because sometimes we don't learn all the exceptions to the rules, which means I give you a general rule, but there's exceptions. So even if the Mishnah is going to say, chutz mi zeh v'zeh, except for this, but sometimes it doesn't mention all the exceptions. So therefore, you cannot always learn from the general rules. So he says, one second, from the fact that Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, even in a place where it says, except for certain things, so it comes out that obviously, right, this wasn't on our Mishnah, but it said in the Mishnah, chutz min hamayim v'melach, right? So it's not on our Mishnah. So therefore, if right now Rabbi Yochanan came and he said this general rule, right, the general rule that he said was that you don't learn from a general rule, right, because there's always exceptions to the rule. So the question is, where is he exactly? Hey Chakai, where is he exactly? Where's Rabbi Yochanan that he says this? So it says the Gemara Hatan Kai. He's on the Mishnah on Kiddushin. The Mishnah says, "Kol mitzvah says shazman grama, anashim chayavim, v'nashim pturot." Any type of a positive commandment which is time bound. So men are obligated and women are exempt. Shelo azman grama, if it's not time bound, echad nashim ve'echad anashim chayavim. So the men and women are obligated, right? That was a general rule, correct? General rule. Uklalahu, it's a general rule. Are you going to tell me it's a general rule that all women are exempt, right, from any type of mitzvah zman grama, from any type of a positive commandment which is time bound? Hare matzah. What about matzah? Women are not obligated in eating matzah on Pesach. Simcha, being happy on the shalosh regalim. Yeah, that's also going to be time bound. Hakel, gathering together. Remember, Motzei Shemitah. After Shemitah, on the 7th year, everyone goes to the Beit HaMikdash on Sukkot, and the Motzei Yom Tov HaAcharon Shel Sukkot, and what do? The king comes and he starts, right, reading from the Parashiot, from the Dvarim there. Yeah? So he says, are you going to tell me, what about the mitzvah? It's also mitzvah zman grama. The Nashim chayvot, and women are obligated. So you see from here that this klal, this general rule, is not something which is sof pasuk, which is, how do you say sof pasuk in English? Which is like a done deal, and there's nothing what to talk about. Understand? There's still exceptions, and there's other things as well. So says the Gemara, he says, one second, let's go the other way around. Are you going to tell me that any mitzvah to say which is not time bound, women are obligated? Talmud Torah, Pidya v'Rivya, Pidyon Ben, these are all mitzvah to say. It has nothing to do with the time. Meaning you're chayav on Pidya v'Rivya every single day of your life. You're chayav on Talmud Torah every single day of the year. It's not time bound, right? There's no time. It's all the time, whenever it happens. Right? And still nashim pturot, women are exempt, meaning women have no mitzvah of procreating, right? The mitzvah is on the husband, right? They have no mitzvah of pidyon ben, it's on the man, right? Or Talmud Torah. You understand? If you remember, I once brought you down a Khatam Sofer. The Khatam Sofer says that the reason why women are exempt from Pidya v'Rivya is because there's no such thing as a mitzvah that comes with tsa'ar, with suffering. Yeah, which means if it would be a mitzvah for them, how could it be? They suffer. Unless the mitzvah itself is to suffer, for example, Inu Yom Kippur, but there's no such thing as that there's a mitzvah that you're supposed to suffer. So says Khatam Sofer, because of that, women are not obligated in Pidya v'Rivya. They have no mitzvah of procreating. Why? Because they suffer during childbirth. So therefore, right, that's why it's not a mitzvah for them. It's only a mitzvah on the husband. Okay? So we do the mitzvah and they suffer. Elam Rabbi Yochanan, but rather Rabbi Yochanan says, En lemedim min haklalot. What does that mean? We're not going to learn from the general rule. Even in a place where we're going to say chutz, even if we are going to say except for so and so, we're still not going to learn it. Okay? So he says, okay, as follows. So Amar Abaye, right? So says Abaye and Sabbath Revimia. Afananami Tadina, we learned this already. Why? We learned this in Masechet Zavim. There we learned Od Klal Acher Amru. There was another general rule that they said by a Zav. Kol shenisal gabe zav, anything which is going to be carried on the zav. That means even though he's not actually touching it, okay, tameh, it's still going to be tameh, impure. Remember, a zav is that he has the seminal discharges without will. It just comes out on its own because of a sickness. Okay, v'chol she'azav nisa alav tahor. Anything which is not going to touch the actual flesh of the zav is going to be tahor, except for something which is ra'ui lemishkav moshav v'ha'adam. Okay, except for something which is fitting to lie down or sit down on it, or a human being that's going to carry a zav. So says the Gemara, the tuleka, well, there's no other rules. Meaning here you give me a general rule. Anything which does not go on the flesh of the zav is going to be pure. Anything which goes on the flesh of the is going to be tameh, except for a few exceptions to the rules. The exception to the rule was if you have a human being carrying a zav, okay, you're going to have also anything which is fitting for mishkav moshav, for lying down or sitting down. So therefore the question is, this is already telling me chutz, it's already telling me except for these few, but there's going to be more. The tuleka, there's no other exceptions to the rules. Vayika merkav, what does that mean? Something that you're going to ride on. So therefore, the merkav zav, that becomes tameh, even if the zav did not touch it. Anything which is fitting to ride on it is going to become tameh as well. Okay? So says the Gemara, Hay merkav yechidani. What's the case of the merkav? If he's actually sitting down on top of the merkav, so haynu moshav, that's already sitting down. We just mentioned 3 seconds ago, anything which is ro'il mishkav umoshav. Mishkav is lying down, moshav is sitting down. Now, if you're going to tell me kol merkav, anything that you ride upon it and you're sitting on top of it, that's what you're riding upon it. So then that's already moshav. So that's already what we just said previously. So says the Gemara, anan hachi kamrin. This is what we really mean to say. Ha'ika gabadu ukafa. You have the back part of the ukaf, okay, which is basically the etz, a piece of wood which is right before the ukaf, right? Which means like this. If you ever has been on a horse, right? What happens is that you have in the front, it's like a piece of wood. Lav dafka nowadays it's wood, but I don't know what it is made out of, but you have something, which means that when you're riding on the horse, you have the saddle, and by the saddle in the front, and usually in the back sometimes, you'll have like a piece of wood. So sometimes you'll hold on to that when you're riding. Okay, so that, I don't know, is that there's a certain name for that or not? Here he just calls it Gaba de Ukva, which is like the back, the back of.
I don't remember, but I've held on for dear life plenty.
Okay, very good. I'm Richard. I'm sure you're still holding on. Life is like that. We're always on a very wild ride. We have to hold on. Yeah, grab onto ruchniyut, to spirituality. Remember, we are the riders on top of the horse. Make sure that we are the ones that are riding the horse and not the horse is riding us. The horse is the chumriyut, is the physicality, right? The rider is the moach, the neshama. So we always have to be on top, not only on top, but holding on for our lives. Because if not, the horse will go wild and then we go flying. Yeah, good musar, no? It's Elul. We have to learn musar in everything that we do. Okay? The Tanya, because we learned in the Braita, ha'ukaf tameh mushav, v'atafus tafeh murkav. So he says the ukaf, which is the actual saddle, is going to be tameh because of mushav, which means because you're sitting down on it. But v'atafus, the part that you hold on to it, is tameh merkav. That's tameh merkav, not tameh mushav. It's a different law. So ela shma minav. So you learn from here. En lemedim min haklalut v'afilu mikom shenema b'chutz. You cannot learn from a general rule, even if it does give you the exceptions, because sometimes it doesn't give you all the exceptions. So therefore, you have to be very, very careful. Okay?
It's called the horn of the saddle.
The horn. Of the saddle. Okay.
Yes,
the horn.
I just check it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, very good. Next. Amar Ravina ve'itema Rav Nachman. Says Ravina and some people say Rav Nachman. Afananami Tanina, we also learned it in another place also as well, that Rabbi Yochanan says you cannot learn from the general rules. It says, Bakol me'arevin, by us, it says that you could make an eruv on everything, mishtatfin, and also shitufei mavot. Remember that usually by eruv, we say me'arevin. By shitufei mavot, since it's a shutafut, it's a partnership, so therefore we call it shitufei, right? Shitufei mavot. Okay? The eruv is not to do with partnership. If I want to make eruvet chumin, right, which means that I want to go outside of my 2,000 amot, I'm going to put my eruv in the middle of Sunny Isles in order that I could walk to Hollywood or whatever it is. So therefore, that's nothing to do with the partnership. That's an eruv. So it's called an eruv. However, though, when we're talking about shutafim mavot, we all come together as one group. We become shutafim. We become partners. So that's why it's called shutaf, shutafim mavot. Okay? Except for mayim v'melach. So says the Gemara vetulo, is there nothing other than water and salt that it doesn't work? So says the Gemara, yeah, v'ha'ika you have kemeinu pitriot. What are kemeinu pitriot? Kemeinu pitriot is different types of like mushrooms and things like that you do not make an eruv. So why is it not mentioned this in the Mishnah that you cannot make an eruv with these types of foods? So says the Gemara, Ela shma mina, but we learn from here. You cannot learn from a general rule, even if it does say except for A, B, and C, there could be some left over. Okay? Next. I'm sure in law it's the same thing, correct, Richard? But I'm sure in law there must be the same concept.
It's complicated. No, I would not say it's the same. Here, even though it says except for this, this, and this, there still could be exceptions. I've learned that from learning Gemara. In law, I would argue otherwise.
Ah, okay. So that just shows you how superior we are. Okay, very good. Perfect. Next. We said in the two dots, Akol nikach b'kesef ma'aser. You could purchase with anything, any type of a food, kesef ma'aser, except for water and salt. Okay? Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina. Right? Chad matni Eiruv, the chad matni ma'aser, which means they learned the same thing to do with water and salt. One of them taught it to do with the Eruv, right? That you could do with everything in Eruv except for these two. And one of them taught it on Ma'aseh Sheni. Chad matni Eiruv, one who learned it on the Eruv, lo shanu ela mayim b'fnei atzmo u'mayim b'fnei atzmo, the Mervin. That's only water on its own and salt on its own. But water with salt, which becomes salt water, Marevin, you could. Why? Because the salt water, usually what you do is that you're going to use it for, as a dipping your bread. Salt water, which means that the salt water, you dip your bread in salt water. So it is a food. And one of them learned it on Maaser. Each one, if it's water by itself or salt by itself, then you cannot purchase it. But if you're going to buy salt water, which is water mixed with salt, you're allowed to purchase it with money of Maaser. So then what's the difference in the halacha between these two opinions? Both of them hold water by itself, no. Salt on itself, no. Both of them together, you make a happy marriage. And you're allowed to. So it says the Gemara, if you could purchase it with money of Maaser, kol shekin, you could use it as an Eruv. Okay? So he says, but the one that says on the Eruv only, aval Maaser, no, because you need like a type of a fruit. It's a pri. It has to be like a type of a fruit that you're eating. Meaning the concept of Maaser Sheni was to buy fruits or mazon. But it has to be things like that to eat it in Eretz Yisrael. And salt water is not considered that type of a fruit. Kiyata Rav Yitzchak, when Rabbi Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, Matni Maaser, he taught Maaser. So Meitvei, so they asked the question, He'id Rabbi Yudah ben Gadish ifnei Rabbi Eliezer. Testified Rabbi Yudah ben Gadish in front of Rabbi Eliezer. Shebet Abba yulochin tzir bekez Maaser. From the house of Abba, they used to take tzir. Tzir is like the brine of the fish, and with the money of Maaser. Why? Because you could dip bread in it. Amarlo, he told him, Shema lo shamata, maybe you didn't hear, and only when you also have part of the fish mixed with the tzir. You need that it's not only just a brine, you need the fish mixed with it. Rabbi Yudah ben Gadish, and Rabbi Yudah ben Gadish didn't say only by tzir, the shumna de peirau, because that's a shuman of a pri, which means it comes out. It's got it says over here, it's got
The real juice.
the main melach al koparim, it got the real juice, the real shuman from the dag, from the fish. But if it's just going to be water or salt water, no, he didn't permit it.
It said the fat of the fish.
Yeah, the fat. That's what we're saying. That's why John Jack said the real fruit of the fish, which means actual fat. Okay? So the Gemara is going to answer. Amar of Yosef says of Yosef, Kav Zayin Mubed, 27b. Lo nitzecha, what are we dealing with? Ela kishenatel letocho shemen. You put also the shemen, which is a pri, also inside of it. That means mei melach levad, salt water by itself is not good. But if you have salt water with oil, then it's going to be good to purchase it with the money of Maaser. Okay? So ask the Gemara, Amalei Abaye comes and he asks, so what do I care about the salt water? The shemen itself is already enough. Right? Why do I have to even mention it? If I've got something which is permitting, which is the oil, so what do I care now about salt water? Forget about the salt water. I only have the oil. The oil is good enough. So I'm going to purchase the oil. Says the Gemara, no. What happened was that you bought the oil more than the value because of the salt water. And therefore, what you did was, which means usually oil would cost you, let's say, $1. You paid $1.30. Why did you pay $1.30? Because of also the salt water. So you were mavliya inside of it. So what he's trying to teach you is, Rabbi Yitzchak is coming to teach you that even though you're not supposed to buy by itself, maimu melach, with mani maaser sheni, you're allowed to buy behavla'ah. Remember, havla means I'm swallowing it in, I'm absorbing it in, and therefore it's not recognizable. For example, schar Shabbat. Let's say I work in a permissible way every single day of the week. Now comes Shabbat, I'm not allowed to receive schar on Shabbat, I'm not allowed to receive compensation on Shabbat or a salary. But what are they allowed to do? They're allowed to be mavliya et zeh bifnim. So for example, let's say if every single day I was going to charge $20, right? Now on Shabbat, I wouldn't be able to receive those $20. What do? In the month, I put everything together. And then I pay you as a monthly salary. Now, even though you're paying me for the Shabbat was not specified, I'm paying you for Shabbat. it was absorbed inside of it. It was all together in one package. So once it becomes one package, it's permitted. So the same yesod over here. So it says the Gemara, is it going to be permitted to do such a thing of havla'ah, you could absorb it inside? And so the Gemara, yes. But Tanya was learned to the Braita. Ben Bagbag Omer. Yeah, Ben Bagbag says, what does he say? Babakar. What does it mean? It says over there, right? What does this mean exactly? Which means you're allowed to purchase a bakar with the oro, which means even though the skins of the animal are not fitting to eat, right? And the or is going to go out now to chulin, which means you could use it for mundane purposes. I'm allowed to purchase with money of maaser sheni a bakar, the animal with its skins. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to eat the animal, and the skins, I'm not going to make a fur coat or a nice hat, right, with it. And there's no problem whatsoever. Uvatzon, what does it mean, uvatzon? You're allowed to purchase the tzon, the sheep, with its shearings. And then you're going to use the shearings for whatever you want. Uvayayin, what does it mean, the wine? You're allowed to purchase the wine with the jug. And then you're allowed to use the jug for whatever you want. Okay? Uvashechar, what does it mean, uvashechar? Melamed shelochin temed. It learns from here that you're allowed to take temed. Temed is like a liquid which is used with anavim, with grapes in water. They're like the chartzine anavim b'mayim. It's like the peels of the grapes with water. That's called temed. Okay? Misheich meats, once it becomes chamutz, once it becomes like sour, once they get this taste. Okay, but beforehand, no. So you see from here that this is actually a proof that you're allowed to do havla'ah by maaser sheni, because it's what you're doing here, havla'ah. Okay. Next, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, "Temetargem li babakar aliba de ben bagbag." Okay, what does this mean? It says, you're right. When it says babakar, whoever is going to explain to me the babakar, it's going according to ben bagbag. Movilna manea batre leve mesuta. I'm going to take his clothing after him to the Bet HaMirchatz. My time, what's the reasoning? Meaning, if somebody's actually going to explain to me that the babakar includes the skins, I'm going to serve them. I'm going to bring their clothing behind them to the bathhouse. Right? I'm going to serve them. My time, what's the reasoning? Why is it difficult? Dafka, why babakar is more difficult than all the rest? There were a few of them. There was the cattle, there was the sheep, there was the wine, right? All these things. Why did he only take the babakar? So it says, Kulu tzrichech lebar babakar. All of them you need it except for the bakar. Why? You don't need it. What does it mean? If it was only written in the cattle, Havamina would have had to have a Havamina, but that only by the cattle you could sell it with the skins. Mishun digufeho. Because at the end of the day, the skin is a part of the body of the animal. The animal and the skin is one entity. Okay? You can't just skin it when it's alive, and if you do, it's going to die. Okay? Aval son, al gav givzita. But the sheep, the lav gufehu, it's something external. It's like hair of a human being. The skin of a human being and the hair is completely different. You could shave somebody's hair off, nothing's going to happen. But you shave off his skin, right? Kaddish, you understand? There's a big difference. So the same thing. By the bakar is one entity with the, how do you call it? With the cattle. However, though, by the sheep, it's not the same entity. Eimalo would say no. If it was only going to be written by the sheep, to do with shearings, Havamina, I would have thought the same. But at least it's connected. But the yain and the kankanoba, the wine which is in a jug, the wine and the jug are not connected at all. At least the sheep is connected with its wool, which you're going to shear. But here it's nothing connected. Emalo. If it was only going to be written by yain, the wine, Havamina, I would have thought to say, Mishum de because that's actually watching it, which means the wine and the jug protects the wine. It's like a safeguard. It's protecting it. Aval temed mishech meats, but temed, which is again you take the peels of the grapes and then you make like the wine from it, right? He says mishech meats, once it becomes sour, the kiyua be'alma, which is like the chamitzut, it's like the taste only. Emalo, I would say no. So that's why katav rachmana shechar. That's why I had to be written shechar, which means in every single one I needed to learn something new except for the bakar. If it would have only been written the shechar, right, which is only, right, that's what we're saying over here, the shechar. Havamina, I would have thought to say that what? Umay shechar, the vela keilot. We're talking about ugat tenim, right? It's like a fig cake, okay? That basically when you eat it, it starts making meshakeret. It starts making also like intoxicated. Okay, the peidahu, because at the end of the day, it's a fruit. But if it's going to be wine, I would say no. If you're going to tell me now, so basically, again, one more time, what are we trying to do? We're trying to go from top to bottom. Now we're going from bottom to top and showing you in each one why I needed to teach you. So by the bakar, I would have said, it said bakar, right? But it's one entity with a skin. By the next one, the sheep is not one entity with the skin, so therefore it was a chidush. By the next one, which was the wine, not only wasn't the same entity, right? But it's not something external, it's something completely external. It's the wine in the jug. The next one was by the shechad. It was completely, forget about it. It wasn't even the same entity. It was something completely different. It was just a taste. So it wasn't safeguarding it. But now we're going to go the other way around. So now the other way around is that at the end of the day, the shechad is, we're not talking about this temed. We're talking about a fig cake. And therefore it's actually a fruit. So that's why we said you're allowed to. The next one is yain agavi kankano, wine by the kankan. Even though I would say no. So right? So that's what I would have said. So if I needed to say it. If it would have been written only the wine and with the jug, it's protecting it. But is a time and no, but I would say that the sheep, it's not. Because the tzemed is not necessary for the protection, meaning the wool is not necessary for the protection of the sheep. The proof, you shave it, right, completely, and nothing happens. They'll continue. That's why I have to say tzon. But why do I need the bakar now? Meaning when I'm going upwards now, why do I need the bakar? So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me, look at Rachmana Babakar, Avamina, if it wouldn't have been written in Babakar, I would have thought Sona Gaveora in Pagavzitalo, that only the sheep you could do with its skin, but not with its wool. Katav Rachmana, and therefore the Bakar is teaching you also the skins. Aitelet Son Letuigizata. The Milat Son is already extra to include the shearings, right? So therefore you don't need that. So says the Gemara, no. If it would have not been written bakar, I wouldn't have known about the tzon with the or, but not the giza, right? Only with the skins and not with the shearings. If so, bakar, right bakar, the melai till it's tzon. But now that you wrote bakar, tzon is extra. So so why is it written tzon? That even agabe gizata, which means if I would have wanted only to learn the or, the skins, and not the shearings, only write the bakar. If I would have only written the bakar, I already know it's only the or. The tzon could be like the bakar, which is only or, but not the giza. The fact that I wrote tzon, which the tzon is now extra, the sheep is now extra, now I learn even the shearings and not the skins. So bakar lamali, hashta tzon agabi gizata mizdavna. If right now you could buy the sheep with the shearings, so do I need it? That's why Rabbi Yochanan says, that's why he said it. He said, you don't need it. It's extra. Meaning that now that I already know that you could do the shearings of the wool, what's the chidush by the bakar? You could take the skin, kal v'chomer. Obviously, if you could take the shearings, this is something to kal v'chomer, you could take the skin. So says the Gemara. Sorry about that. So basically now what we say is as follows. So we say now, so what is the machloked then? Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, Rabbi Eliezer. It's Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, Rabbi Eliezer. V'hani tanai de lekaman. And these tanaim later on. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, Rabbi Eliezer, dash shirubui miyute. V'hani tanai dash. So basically there's a machloked like this. Remember that there's two ways of learning. There's something which is called a ribuy umiyut and something which is called a klal ufrat. Ribuy umiyut means that there's something going to be extra. So I'm going to add something, for example, an extra word, or sometimes I'm going to minimize, for example, ach.
It says amplifications and limitations.
Thank you. Amplifications and limitations. That's the professional way of saying it. Yeah. So basically what happens is that that's one thing. And then there's another thing which is called the klal ufrat. Klal ufrat is the generalization and specifications.
Correct.
Thank you. Yeah. So basically what happens is that there's the machloket. How do you actually learn this up? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish Rabbi Eliezer dash ribuy umuta. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish Rabbi Eliezer, they are doresh ribuy umuyat, which means like this: to do with the foods by maaser, it's written v'natata kesef v'chol asher teven shecha. You're going to give the money for any types of food that you want, that your soul desires. Riba, so that's an addition, which means amplification. Now it says babakar v'tzom v'yav v'shechar, with cattle, sheep, wine, and beer. Niet, it's coming to minimize, right? But it's what was the other word? Not amplification, it's the limitation. It's limiting it to these types of foods. But then it says anything that you want again. So then again, it's coming to amplify it again. So riba mi have riba. So when you have an amplification, limitation amplification, riba kol, so it's adding everything. Okay? My Rabbi, what are you coming to include exactly? Rabbi kol mili, it's going to include everything. Umay miyet, what's coming to limit? The limitation is, according to Rabbi Eliezer, miyet seed, it's going to limit the brine of the fish, which is not the actual goof of the pri, it's not the actual body of the pri, it's actually just the brine. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, miyet mayim melach, it's going to exclude water and salt. The honey Tanaim, now the other Tanaim, they're going to come and they're going to say that shikal ufrat. It's the specifications and generalizations. The Tanya was learned in a right of it's a general rule, which means it's coming to generalize all types of food. Baba whether it's going to be the cattle, sheep, or the wine or the beer, prat, it's a specification. Anything which your heart desires, again, it's a generalization. So when it says when it says generalization, specification, generalization, you're always going to judge like the specification. So therefore, maha prat, just like the pirat is mifurash, it has to be written specifically that it has to be pri, which means it has to be like a fruit from a fruit, which means egel from the bakar, se from the tzon, it's pri imotam. So it has to be like it. Or for example, anavim also, okay? The gidule karka, it has to be also gidule karka, okay, which is basically the concept of gidule karka is anything which grows from the ground.
Comes from the land.
Comes from the ground, grows from the ground, right? Afkol, so too anything which is pri gidule karka, also pri and gidule karka, it's also going to be okay.
But Rabbi, we know that that way they allow meat to purchase meat as with the Maser funds.
Exactly. What's the problem?
But meat doesn't grow from the ground.
No, but this is talking about from the other things which go from the ground, which means all of them, they get their food from the ground.
Look, on the one way, the first way.
Look in the footnote. You have it there, Richard. The footnote says, the footnote brings Rashi. Rashi says, anavim grow from the ground, grapes grow from the ground, and bakar v'tzon and sheep and cattle, they are nizonim mina karka, right? They are fed from the ground. From the fact that machim. So that's
thank you. That was good.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, that means it's permitted to be a pri. Pri means a child from the mother, which is a fruit from the fruit. So you could have an egel, a calf, instead of the cattle, or you could have a sheep instead of the goats or whatever. Like all these different things. So it says v'tanya yidach. Another one says ma prata mefurash vlad vladot haaretz, which are things that come from the ground. Okay. It has to be something which comes from the ground. So again, it sounds like the same thing. My benai, what's the difference between these two opinions? Abaye says dagimi kebenau. The difference between them is dagim, fish. According to the mandamar, primi gdule karka. According to the mandamar that says it could be a fruit from a fruit or anything that grows from the ground, right? So then it's going to be permitted to buy fish. Why? Because dagim gdule karka, they grow from the ground, right? Well, they're considered why? Because they also feed from the tzmachim, from the the things in the sea, right? So they also grow from the ground. But according to the mandamar vlavladot haaretz, has to come from the land. Dagimi mayo. The fish are created in water, right? They're not created from the land, and therefore you cannot have fish. So that's the difference between these two different opinions. So says the Gemara, Miyamar Abaye, does Abaye actually says dagimi gidule karka? That's what Abaye that just said it. Abaye says the fish are gidule karka, they grow from the ground. Abaye says, Kaf Chet Amud Aleph 28a1. Aval achal putita. If you ate a putita, which is basically a sheret samayim, it's a type of creepy crawlers in the sea, which is called putita. Does it say in English what it is? I have nothing here.
Not by me.
Yeah, it's a small thing that does not have a kazait. So it says, since it's a bidia, you're going to get 4 different types of lashes. Okay, arba pe'amim. And if you ate it purposely with a warning, you're going to get 4 different times. Twice because of the 2 lavim of eating shatzim, and twice because of the lavim of sheret samayim. Now, even though it does not have a putita, it does not have a kazait, and always you're only going to be chayav if you eat a kazait, still, since it's a bidia, that's why you're going to get lashes. Nimala, if you eat a nimala, an ant, you're going to get 5 lashes. Okay? Twice because of the shatzim, and 3 because of the lavim of sheret ashoretz alaretz. So that's another 3, so that's 5 in total. Tir'ah, right, which is basically a hornet, you're going to get 6. Right? That's why, if you remember, I already told you, a lot of people don't know this. It once happened, I remember many years ago, the COR, they prohibited all the restaurants from having broccoli. And I remember my uncle, right, used to own King Solomon's Table, which was an all-you-can-eat restaurant. Now, it was a Chinese restaurant, and we know that by Chinese, one of their main dishes is broccoli. So what are you going to do now, right? So I remember that he went and he
What
told
is
me,
that? What is that?
broccoli. You don't know what broccoli is?
Never heard of it. What is it?
Broccoli.
Broccoli, not
Oh,
cauliflower.
broccoli.
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 Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, so broccoli, what happened is that's one of their main dishes, right? Even until today, you go to Chai Walk and they have broccoli with the meat. Yeah, so what do you have? So they prohibit it. COR, that's a kosher establishment there, they prohibit it. So they went and they were trying to explain. Now, how do you explain to a Bait that his main parnasah is coming from these types of food? Now you say, no broccoli. What does that mean? So they went and they told him like this, and listen to this. This, my uncle is telling this to me. My uncle Joel Malek, he comes, he's telling to this, I don't remember how many years ago, right? He went and he told me this. He said, what did they tell them? Very simple. They showed them a video of how many bugs are in the broccoli. And then they went and they told them, I'm going to ask every single one of you here, would you guys ever serve pork or pig to your customers? Everyone, pork, pig, chas shalom, what, you crazy? Averada. So he says, okay, how many averot do you get when you eat a pig? Yeah, one love. How many averot do you get when you eat a bug? It could be either 5 for an ant or 6. 5 or 6. So think about it. It's better to eat a pig than to eat averot, than to eat all these things. They were like this. Huh? They were shocked. They finished everything. That's all they had to say. That's it. They finished it. They understood. It clicked home. It went inside their brains. Why was they understood? And that's a big problem nowadays as well. Some people come and they tell me, Rabbi, I'm kosher at home, but I eat out. I said, what do you eat out exactly? No, I only will have a salad. I said, you know what? It's better that you eat the pork. I don't actually tell them that, but that's what I would have told them. Why? Because what? If you're going to eat a salad that was not checked and there's bugs in there, and you just ate the bugs, that was worse than eating pork. But the problem is people don't understand that. You understand? Because people, it doesn't go in their heads, in their brains. But that's what they have to understand. So therefore, a person shouldn't just think, no, I'm just eating a salad out, or sometimes they say, I'm just eating fish. But the fish could be full of bugs. There's tons of worms and things like that in fish. You understand? So therefore, also fish is not the most simplest thing. That's besides the fact of Bishul Goy, and besides the fact of all the other Yisurim that they also transgress, but also the Doraitas. So therefore, people have to open up their brains, open up their minds, and understand what's going on around them. It will be very, very important, right, to understand this, okay? Have a wonderful day. Shabbat Shalom. We finished the daf. We'll continue on Sunday.
Shabbat Shalom.